All right, welcome to the lab portion of this week's lesson. So in this lab, we're going to be kind of introducing Rackspace, the cloud hosting and computing that goes along with that. And then we're also going to go through and do kind of the hello world of servers, which is essentially to get a really quick and dirty website up on the internet that says hello world, or just get something up on the internet through Apache. And to get there, we'll have to do a bunch of different things in the terminal, including installing some software and making sure we understand some of our basic commands. And we'll go through all that in a little bit. But before we can do that, we need to get a server to start playing around with, because as it stands right now, some of us may have a local terminal, but we don't actually have a server to start running commands on. So this is where Rackspace comes in. So we need to go to rackspace.com and get logged into our account. So this would be the account you set up last week. We want to go log into the Rackspace Open Cloud. And once you're logged in here, you should see something that looks like this. And unless you've created any servers, you should have kind of an empty, just an empty dashboard. There's nothing here yet. So just to quickly kind of go through everything, just really quick, we're not going to get into all of this right now. We're primarily going to be concentrating on the cloud servers area here and also the saved images. And saved images are essentially snapshots of our servers that we store, and we can recall them at any time we want. So say in the middle of the semester, you've got a great setup of Apache and some other things, and it's perfect. It works just how you want it to, and all the permissions are set right, and Apache works really well. You can save that image and save it in your saved image area, and then later on down the line, maybe like when you come across your final project and you need that base Apache server, you can build a new server from that image instead of having to redo all those commands all over again. And this is really where cloud computing gets powerful, because as a developer, I can build a bunch of servers that do very specific things and create images of all of them. And then whenever I need to scale or add servers to my system, I just fire up a new server from a saved image, and I've got an exact replication of the exact stack and server I need to run my application. And not only can you do this just by logging in and clicking on saved image and create new server from saved image, but you can also do this programmatically through an API or an application programming interface, which means I can actually write code or write software that will build, maintain, destroy all the Rackspace servers that I need. So this becomes really, really important when you want to try to automate the scaling of your website. You can do that by programmatically hitting Rackspace's API to create new servers. That's getting a little complicated. We're not even really going to get into the API usage much this semester. So for the meantime, we can just create a server the old-fashioned way by clicking Create Server. So this is pretty much going to be the main screen that we're dealing with, and this setup that I'm going to show you right now will kind of always be the base server that we'll start with. So when I say I need you guys to get a base server running to start with, you can reference this video because this is going to be the base server. So really quickly, let's just look at the pricing details to make sure we have what we want. And this is the server that we're going to be using, the 512 megabyte server. That runs us just over 2 cents an hour, or about $16 a month. And that's if you're running it full for the entire month. It would cost you about $16. So good to know. Definitely be careful if you create any of these larger servers to play around with, that you stop them when you're done, because you'll end up incurring some fairly hefty monthly charges if you don't. And just a disclaimer, I am not responsible for you guys running up large hosting bills with Rackspace. You need to be mindful of what you're doing and making sure you're spinning up the right size servers and for the right amount of time, so that you're not stuck with a giant bill at the end of the month. I can pretty much promise you, if you stick with the 512 servers, the most you'll ever have to deal with at the end of the month is a $16 fee, and that is much more manageable than, say, a $1,900 fee or even a $420 fee. So just be aware of that as you're going through. So first thing we need to do is we need to give this server a name. And it doesn't really matter what you call it. It's just going to be how you reference it in the dashboard. So we'll call this server Hello World. And we want to, let's see, the region doesn't really matter. I'm going to go with, well, let's just go with the Dallas region because that's the default. I typically do use the Chicago region too, you know, because I have an affinity for the Midwest. But Dallas is the default, so we'll leave that. And Dallas is the primary location for Rackspace, so maybe they'll have more people there helping us out. All right, next thing we need to worry about is the image. And so here you can see you can either pick from your saved images, which we don't have, or you can use Rackspace's images, which we do want to use. And we need to scroll down until we find our Ubuntu's here. So there are 5 different versions of Ubuntu server that we can install. They start all the way here at 10.04 and go all the way up to 12.10. So you might think that it would be best to just go ahead and use the most recent version of Ubuntu, but I'm going to exercise a little bit of caution here. And while I'm pretty sure 12.10 is fairly stable and works fine, for web servers, I recommend going with one of the LTS versions. And LTS stands for long-term support, and that means that Ubuntu will continue to support these particular platforms for, I think, 10 years. Maybe not quite that long, but it's definitely longer than like the 11.04s and 11.10s. So for instance, Ubuntu 10.04 LTS, this has been an Ubuntu version since I started teaching this class a few years ago, and it's still a very, very stable Ubuntu version, and it's long-term support, which means you know that if you build a server on this operating system, that Ubuntu is going to maintain security patches for it for the foreseeable future, so you don't have to worry about constantly upgrading that. So let's actually go with the 12.04 LTS, the Precise Pangolin, and we'll go ahead and use the 12.04 version. It's a little more, obviously it's newer than 10.04 LTS, but we still have that long-term support, which is important. And finally, we just want to come down here and pick our size. We want to make sure we pick the smallest server we can, which is the 512 megabyte server. And once we've done all of that, we can click Create Server. And this is a very important thing to make yourself aware of here, this root admin password. So we're going to talk about the root user in a little bit once we get into the terminal. But you need to save this password because this is how you get into your server for the very first time. You're going to have to, this is kind of the default password that a Rackspace sets for you. So go ahead and just copy that into your clipboard so you have it. We're going to need to paste it into a text file or just, you know, into our login when we have to use that, but just make sure you have that on record. You should also get an email from Rackspace when you spin up a new server that will also have this information in it. So I've copied that to my clipboard. We'll click Dismiss Password, and let me just run down a few things while this is creating. So you can see up here that the server is building. You can see the system image we're using, the size and region of our particular server. And if we come down here, there's additional information that we can see about our server that will populate once it's up and running and ready to go. So at this point, we don't really have to do anything else. We just need to wait for this to finish. Once it's finished, Rackspace will give us an IP address where we can access the server, and you can see these starting to build down here. We'll wait till it's a completely 100% done before we verify that these are the final IP addresses. So in the next video, we're going to look at the final build from Rackspace, and then we're going to hop in the terminal and see if we can't mess around with this server a little bit. So we'll see you in the next video.